Donald Trump stepped out of his luxury hotel in Manhattan, the golden letters spelling Trump Tower gleaming above him. The night air was crisp, and the usual commotion of the city filled the streets, horns blaring, conversations blending into a symphony of urban life. His limousine waited at the curb, its sleek black exterior polished to perfection. As Trump adjusted his tie, preparing to enter the car, something caught his attention. Just a few feet away, near the entrance, a man sat hunched over, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing. His beard was thick and unkempt, his hands trembling as he held a tattered piece of cardboard with a simple message: "Just trying to survive." Trump paused, an unusual occurrence for a man always on the move. Normally, he would have walked past without a second glance, his mind preoccupied with business, deals, and the politics of the day. But something about the man's weary, piercing eyes struck him. He turned to one of his security guards. "Who's that guy?" The guard barely spared a glance. "Just some homeless man, sir. He's been there all week." Trump studied the man for a moment longer. There was something about him, something that didn't quite fit the stereotype of someone who had simply given up. Impulsively, he stepped forward. "You!" he called out. "What's your name?" The man looked up, startled that someone of such status was addressing him. "Jim," he said hoarsely. "Name's Jim." Trump tilted his head. "What happened?" Jim exhaled, rubbing his hands together for warmth. "Used to run a diner over on 5th, he muttered. "It was good for a while, but then rent skyrocketed, competition grew, and one bad decision after another led me here." Trump narrowed his eyes. "So you know business?" Jim let out a bitter chuckle. "I knew enough to lose everything." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then, Trump smirked. "You seem sharp. If you had one shot, one chance to get back on your feet, what would you do?" Jim hesitated, unsure if this was some sort of joke. "I'd work," he said finally. "I'd do whatever it takes to get out of this." That was all Trump needed to hear. "I'll tell you what," Trump said. "I'm giving you 1 month. You'll have a place to stay and a job at one of my properties. No handouts, just work. You prove yourself, and we'll see what happens next." Jim's eyes widened. "You serious?" Trump smirked. "I don't waste my time." Jim wasn't sure if this was some kind of prank, but within hours, he found himself in a modest but clean apartment, arranged by Trump's team. He took his first hot shower in months, shaved, and stared at his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized himself. The next morning, he reported for work. His new job? Janitorial staff at one of Trump's hotels. Mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, hauling garbage. It wasn't glamorous, but Jim didn't complain. He worked harder than anyone expected, arriving early and staying late. At first, some of the staff dismissed him as just another down-on-his-luck guy, but as days turned into weeks, people started noticing something different about Jim. One afternoon, a manager saw him organizing the cleaning supply closet in a way that maximized efficiency. "Where'd you learn to do that?" the manager asked. "Owned a diner once," Jim replied, shrugging. "You learn a few things about running a tight operation." The manager nodded, impressed. Word of Jim's work ethic and initiative slowly made its way up the chain. Eventually, it reached Trump himself. One evening, Trump called Jim into his office. "You've been working hard," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I like that, but tell me, if you were running a hotel, what would you do differently?" Jim hesitated, unsure if this was another test. But then, his old instincts kicked in. "I'd improve efficiency," he said. "Too many processes waste time and money. You streamline operations, and you cut costs while improving service." Trump raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Jim outlined small but effective changes, adjusting staff schedules, optimizing inventory management, and creating incentives for employees to boost morale. Trump listened, his smirk growing wider. "There's a small hotel under my brand that's been underperforming," he finally said. "I'm making you assistant manager. You prove you can handle it, and maybe you'll get more." Jim was stunned. Just weeks ago, he was sleeping on the streets. Now, he was being given the chance of a lifetime. The hotel Jim was assigned to had been struggling. The previous manager had left in frustration, morale was low, and profits were declining. But Jim tackled the challenge head-on. He spent late nights going through the hotel's financials, identifying wasteful expenses. He restructured staff schedules, cutting unnecessary overtime costs, while ensuring workers weren't overburdened. He introduced customer loyalty incentives, encouraging repeat business. Within 3 months, the results were undeniable. Revenue had increased by 30%. Guest satisfaction scores improved, and employees worked with renewed energy. Trump, ever the businessman, took notice. "You're making me money," he told Jim during a check-in. "That's the best compliment you can get." One day, a journalist checking into the hotel overheard employees talking about Jim's journey. Intrigued, she did some digging. The next morning, headlines flashed across the news. From homeless to hotel executive, the man Trump gave a second chance. The story went viral. News stations clamored for interviews. Jim, once invisible to society, was now a symbol of redemption. During a press conference, a reporter asked Trump why he had taken a chance on Jim. Trump smirked. "I saw potential. He proved me right." Jim, standing beside him in a tailored suit, could only shake his head in amazement. Months later, Jim stood in the hotel lobby, watching guests check in and employees move with purpose. He had built something here, something real. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a man sitting outside on the curb. A tattered sign rested in his lap. Jim grabbed his coat and stepped outside. "Hey," he said. The man looked up. Jim offered a small smile. "I've got an idea." Because now he understood. Sometimes all a person needed was for someone to take a chance on them, just like Trump had done for him.